This video and all of its contents, including any opinions expressed by the narrator, are strictly for entertainment purposes only and is not intended in any way as a substitute for professional services and consultation from a licensed therapist, doctor, attorney, or other licensed professional service provider. Each person must make their own life decisions, and those decisions are theirs. Welcome back to Find Your Alpha. I'm back at you this week with another terrific video story, and this is a crazy story of deception. The title of it is My Perfect 10 Girlfriend Has Been Using Me as a Placeholder Until Her AP Gets Divorced. Now let's get into this story and see what happened here. He starts off and he says, I'm so full of rage right now, I'm breathing fire and having thoughts of doing irrational things to a couple of people. I know that's not wise, so I've come here to blow off some steam. To get to the point, earlier today I learned my girlfriend of 2 years has been having an affair with a guy she works with for at least the past 3 years, maybe longer. I happened upon this information while using her tablet while she was at work. I had the morning off as I had scheduled both my annual physical and my 6-month dental checkup this morning. After those appointments, I worked from the apartment in the afternoon. During some downtime, I went to lay down to rest my eyes for a bit. Before laying down, I noticed her tablet on the dresser, so I grabbed it to check my X feed. Now, X, for those of you that don't know, that was formerly known as Twitter. He says, I never used the device before, but I remembered the password as I saw her enter it a few times before. So she didn't give him her password, but he saw her enter it. After scrolling through my X feed, I did some poking around out of curiosity. I know that might be considered an invasion of privacy, but that was not my intention. Oh, come on, I think it was. I noticed right away she was using a messaging app I didn't know about. That's a big red flag. I clicked on the app, and that's where everything came crashing down. There were hundreds of messages between her and a guy from her work going back over 3 years. I spent the next 2 hours reading every exchange they had, and it made me ill. At first, I wasn't sure who he was, but eventually I came across a message where he referenced his wife, and it all clicked. I had met and talked to the guy and his wife at a fundraiser their company hosted at the zoo last fall. They've been having an affair for at least 3 years and have described me and the AP's wife as placeholders. They profess to be soulmates and deeply in love. According to the messages, their grand plan is for him to divorce his wife in 4 years when his youngest graduates, so he and my girlfriend can be together. Unbelievable. Until then, they had an agreement where my girlfriend could date other guys as he will need to keep up the charade with his wife. At first, it looks like he didn't care about her dating me, but he got really upset when she told him we were both moving in together. At first, he was berating her and asking her not to do this. When that didn't work, he switched to begging, but she did it anyway. She told him if he wasn't willing to leave his wife now, she wasn't willing to give me up either. So this guy's girlfriend is definitely using the OP as a pawn. From what I can tell, they've been hooking up whenever they get the chance, which appears to be a few times a month. Listen, if they're hooking up more than a few times a month. The rest of the time, they're sending messages and pics back and forth and professing their love. Her AP is super jealous and is always asking her for details of what she did with me. She lies and tells him we just have boring X, but it's anything but. She does everything with me, and we do it just about every night, and she's normally the one who initiates. So I'm not sure what she's going for there. That's a good question. He's a sales director in his mid-40s with 2 kids, and my girlfriend is 27 and works as a frontline supervisor at the same company. The OP says they're obviously both sick people, and I think she may be a nympho. Well, it sounds like from the way you described her. I feel like a complete fool, and I'm doing everything I can to keep myself from doing something crazy. Well, don't do that. When I first read the messages, I was really upset in a sad way, but now I'm just enraged and want revenge. And that's the end of his original post. Now, he has a number of updates that we're going to take a look at, but before we do that, I want to remind you, if you like what you've heard so far, be sure to hit that like button right now. That will help out the channel tremendously and also help get this video seen by people all over the world. Now, let's take a look at those updates. The first update came the following day. He says, "Many of you have asked for a little more detail on our relationship, so here goes. She and I just moved in together 2 months ago after dating for almost 2 years. We met while taking a software class for our jobs. She approached me and struck up a conversation and then started sitting by me in class. I thought she was beautiful, but I didn't think much of it since I felt she was out of my league." Never think that about a woman, guys. I'm not knocking myself as I'm well above average, but she is a solid 10. A few sessions into the class, she asked if I'd like to study with her at a local coffee shop. I agreed and was taken in by not just her beauty, but her confident attitude, as up to that point, no woman had ever approached me like that. When we met to study, she made it clear she was interested in more than that, as we spent all of 5 minutes talking about the course and the rest of the time with her asking me a million questions. So what you can see happened here, this woman selected him out. She could tell this was a nice guy, probably a soft touch type of guy, and she just went right in after him. When it was time to leave, I wanted to ask her out, but my fear of rejection kicked in and I didn't. See, that's what nice guys do. I could see she wanted me to and was disappointed. On the way home, I was kicking myself for not doing so. Later that evening, she sent me a text stating she really had a good time and looked forward to seeing me again. I quickly responded with the same and asked her if she'd like to go for a drink after work one night that week. She accepted and the date went very well. Her attraction to me was even more obvious and things got heated at the end of the night. After that, we started steadily dating and became exclusive after a couple weeks. I thought I had gone to heaven. Since then, things have been great between us until all this came out. What baffles me is that she is obsessed with taking care of me in every way possible, including in the bedroom. Well, the reason she's probably doing this psychologically is that's her way at getting back at that AP who is unwilling to leave his wife. That's what I think's going on. She's also been very engaged with my parents and family. They love her and her parents love me. After 2 years of being together, it felt natural that we move in together, which we did at the end of June. I was planning to pop the question to this woman sometime later this year. Thank God I found this out now before I did that. That's why this whole thing has me both boiling with anger and perplexed. She was definitely using me as a cover for her affair with a married man, but why was she treating me like a king? Well, I told you why just a minute ago. She could have gotten away with doing a lot less and I would have still been very satisfied. He says, "That's why I think she's a psycho and likely a nympho." That's really all I've got to say there. I'll come back and update once I figure out how I'm going to handle things. In the meantime, keep sending your responses. And that's the end of his first update. Then he comes back later that day with another update. He says, "Don't worry, folks, I'm not going to do anything crazy as much as I'd like to. She's not worth it and neither is he." Well, good for you. Like I always say, never employ violence unless it's for self-defense because you're the one that's going to be getting in trouble. He goes on and says, "That being said, I do want to ruin their lives and inflict a level of mental pain that is equal to or greater than what they've caused me. These are two vile people and deserve to be miserable together." Well, I would agree with that last statement. And that's the end of his second update, and now he comes back almost 3 weeks later with his final update. He says, "Hello everyone. A lot has happened since my last post, so this is going to be a long one. I thought long and hard about how I was going to handle things with my girlfriend in order to inflict maximum pain, and in the end, I decided not to directly confront her. Instead, I anonymously sent proof of the affair to the AP's wife, and wow, did things go off the rails from there. Now let's see what happened. I sent a typed letter along with copies of key messages and a few nudes to her the day after my last update. After not being able to sleep for 2 days straight, I decided to handle things this way, and I'm glad I did. That was on a Thursday, and by Wednesday evening of the following week, I noticed my girlfriend was acting differently, like her mind was on something else. She was still very attentive to me, but she had a blank stare on her face like her mind was in another place. She was the same the next day, and then on Friday when I got home from work, she greeted me at the door and said we needed to talk. It was clear she had been crying, and I knew something big had happened. She started off telling me she had been suspended from her job. I asked her for what. She hesitated and said that she was accused of having an affair with, and he says here, insert guy's name. I acted surprised and then asked her if it was true. She said it was, but it only happened once, and it was all a big misunderstanding. She's trickle truthing. Now remember, she doesn't know I know any of this. So after hearing this, I jump up and walk into the bedroom and lay my face down on the pillow like I'm crying. She comes in and tries to console me. At this point, she's crying hard and telling me over and over that she's sorry. Meanwhile, I'm laughing my ass off with my face in the pillow. After a few minutes, I look up at her and ask her, how could she do this to me after everything I've done for her? By this time, she is into full hysterics and says something along the lines of, I know I'm a terrible person, but I'm sorry and I hope you can forgive me. I told her I needed to be alone and asked if she could leave the apartment. She said she didn't want to leave but agreed to stay in the spare room and give me all the space I needed. The following day at work, I got a call from the AP's wife. She must have remembered me from the fundraiser at the zoo and got my number off LinkedIn or something. She introduced herself and told me she had something important to tell me and wanted to meet. Even though I knew the reason for her call, I asked her what it was about, and she said she'd tell me when we met. I played it up further and told her I didn't know her and really didn't want to meet with her alone and asked if I could bring my girlfriend along. She said no and then told me what she was going to tell me involves my girlfriend. I set up a meeting time with her after work at the Starbucks near my office. Seems like everybody meets at Starbucks, don't they? After I hung up with her, I called my girlfriend and told her about the conversation. She begged me not to meet with her as she didn't want her to fill my mind with lies. I told her I was undecided at that point and had to think about it and left it there. When I left work that day, I called my girlfriend and told her I was meeting with her, and she went bananas, crying, screaming, begging, and pleading with me not to meet with her as we were making this whole thing out to be more than it was. Can you imagine? I told her I was going to do it. She asked me where I was meeting her, and I refused to tell her as I didn't want her showing up. I eventually had to end the call as she wouldn't stop begging me not to do it. During the meeting with the AP's wife, I had my phone silenced and my girlfriend kept calling and texting me repeatedly. At the meeting, AP's wife gave me copies of the letter and all the messages and pics I sent her. It was weird watching this play out and having to act surprised like it was the first time I had seen them. So this woman is thinking, hey, I'm giving this guy some earth-shattering information. Meanwhile, he's the one who sent it to her. At the end of the meeting, I kind of felt bad as she seemed like a really nice woman and a great mother of two young daughters. Me bringing this to her attention will probably destroy their family, but I think it was important she knew what was going on to allow her to make a decision that was in her best interest. Yeah, I would agree with that. When I got back to the apartment, my girlfriend was waiting for me with tears flowing and asking how it went. I sat her down and told her I was going to ask her some questions and I wanted her to answer truthfully. And if she didn't, we would be done. At first, she begged me not to do this and asked that we just start over, but I insisted and told her if she didn't comply, I would assume the worst and we'd be done, so she reluctantly agreed. The first question I asked was, I just want to confirm you were physical with him just the one time. She didn't hesitate and told me yes. I then asked her if the one time was spontaneous or had they been having an emotional affair before that. Now get this. She claimed they started flirting in the office about a week before their one time, which she claimed happened just 2 weeks ago. I repeated what she said back to her and asked if that was her final answer, and she said it was. I had several other questions I planned to ask, but she already incriminated herself with the first two, so I didn't even bother. Instead, I handed her the stack of messages and pictures dating back 3 years and asked her to explain. When she saw what I had, she completely lost her mind and buried her head crying. I think she knew her lies were fully exposed and there was no way out of this. I got up and went into the bedroom and locked the door. I sat there on the edge of the bed for over an hour, just staring at the floor and wondering where I went wrong. There were no clues, I mean none. She's treated me great since we met and we seldom disagreed on anything. This whole thing is so surreal. Yeah, I would agree. This is crazy. I eventually went out to the living room and sat down on a chair beside where she was lying. She was on the couch, curled up in a ball and crying. After about 10 minutes of silence from me, she looked up at me and said she was going to get fired tomorrow. I asked her how she knew, and she said her AP texted her to let her know that he was told they were going to be called back into the office tomorrow and let go. So she's still communicating with the AP. I didn't say anything and was actually surprised she told me about this, especially the part about her AP texting her. She then asked me if there was anything she could do to save our relationship. I looked at her like she was nuts and told her no, absolutely not. Then I asked her why. Why did she do this to me? Why did she choose me of all the people to use in her evil game? She said she could tell right away I was a sweet guy, aka a nice guy, and admitted she did originally target me to use as a pawn. But after we were together for a while, she claimed she fell in love with me. I told her, really? You say you fell in love with me, all the while you continue to do, and I use the word do instead of the F word, your boyfriend up to getting caught and would still be doing him now if you weren't. She didn't deny that, but said she had only been with him a dozen or so times since she fell in love with me, whereas before she met me, they were meeting up 2 to 3 times a week. I told her it didn't matter if she was with him one time or 1,000 times, it was all the same to me and there was no way I could ever stay with her. Good for you, mister. We stayed up and talked that night until after 3 a.m. with her begging and trying to convince me to give her a chance now that her AP was out of the picture. Well, I don't think he is out of the picture. She was just texting with him. I rejected all her proposals, and in the end, I agreed to move out, and she agreed to take over the apartment lease effective the 1st of next month. I moved all my stuff out that weekend, but let her keep the bed since she admitted to using it many times to entertain her AP. Ugh, that makes it even worse. She also agreed not to badmouth me in any way, and I told her if I found out she did, I would share the messages and photos with everyone she knows and let them know she broke up a family. She swore she wouldn't ever badmouth me, as she said her objective is to someday convince me to get back with her. He says that ain't happening, B.I. A week has gone by since I moved out, and she's called me every day about something. It's always some dumb question she has about something, but it always ends up with her trying to proposition me. Yeah, being a perfect 10, she knows she can use that body, and that's going to be able to lure in most any man, I'm sure. She told me our S was the best she's ever had, and I have an open door to spend the night back at our apartment whenever I want. I don't think anyone has ever rejected her, so the fact I'm not interested is driving her crazy. Yeah, if she's a perfect 10, I can tell you she probably has never been rejected. Let me tell you, I've been really tempted, as it was fireworks every time I was with her. But there's no way I'm ever touching that virus factory again, he says. In fact, when I think about some of the things I did with her, I get sick to my stomach realizing what she was doing with the AP the day before. Yeah, you don't even want to think about that. She's a smart person, but she's definitely got something loose upstairs. I told her she needs to see a therapist for her mental problems. She agreed and has an appointment set up for next month. She's now claiming the reason she is the way she is was from her growing up in a broken home. She said because of this, she has a constant feeling of abandonment, and that's why she did what she did, as it was all in the spirit of pleasing men so she wouldn't be alone, and now she is all alone. Go figure, he says. Listen, I totally empathize with kids who grow up in a broken home and don't get to see both of their parents all the time. But in this case, I think she's using that as an excuse. As far as the AP goes, his wife is done with him and has filed for divorce. She didn't waste any time and she's told me she's going to take him for everything he has and make it difficult for him to see his kids. Well, listen, I agree with her doing whatever she can to get as much as she can from him. But the part I disagree with is the fact she's going to make it difficult for him to see his kids. I don't think that's healthy because that's only going to cause turmoil for the kids if she starts causing trouble. The only thing she regrets is getting him fired, as that's probably going to impact her settlement, but I think she did the right thing. I met with her once, and like my ex, AP's wife has been calling me every day since to tell me something or to ask me a question. Uh-oh, you see what's going on here? I know what she really wants, but I'm not interested. I'm not interested in dating a married or soon to be divorced woman with kids, especially under these circumstances. That's smart. Stay away from that. I'll wait for her to ask me and then I'll politely let her down. But in the meantime, I enjoy talking to her and getting the updates about what she's doing to make her husband's life miserable. She said she doesn't know if her husband has connected with my ex since all this happened, and she really doesn't care, nor do I. According to my ex, she broke things off with the AP and told me she was planning to do that anyway, as she was getting tired of him before everything went down. He says, "Sure, sweetheart, I believe that." Not. Well, thank goodness he didn't fall for that. So that's the last chapter of this horror story, and as things stand right now, I plan on remaining single for the foreseeable future. And that's the end of his story. And overall, I think this guy handled the situation well. And now I want to take a look at what I think are some of the morals of this story. The first one: beware of the nines and tens, as they will likely break your heart one day. Now, I'm not saying, hey, avoid these women, because if you have the opportunity to date them and have fun with them, by all means do it. What I'm saying is you've got to be very wary of getting into a serious relationship with them because they have many options. And many of these women are constantly monkey branching. So just beware. Next. If a hot woman starts pursuing you all of a sudden, and that's never happened before, you've got to question what her motives are. Because oftentimes what you will find in these situations is this is a woman who is looking for a nice guy to settle down with. So be very careful in these situations, regardless of how tempting they may be. Next. Never employ violence unless it's for self-defense. Cheaters are not worth it. I've said that on countless videos, so I'm not going to belabor that, and I'm going to go on now to the next point, which is some women will use their second and third choices as placeholders and will drop them in a New York minute when their first choice comes around. And that is just a fact. Regardless how well you treat them, no matter what you do for them, no matter what you do to better yourself, you could be extremely successful, you could keep yourself in great shape, you could do all those things. But if you're not their first choice, you're never going to be on solid ground with her if that first choice is still out there floating around. And related to that, if you discover you are not her first choice, the relationship is likely not going to work out, so you should just end it. Now, that's my personal opinion. You may feel differently. And the reason why I say if you discover you're not her first choice is because sometimes you don't know that. Like in this case, this guy didn't realize, hey, he wasn't her first choice. This woman was giving him everything, treating him like a king. Meanwhile, she was living a duplicit life. So if you do find out you're not her first choice, my advice is to end it. And finally, once cheating has occurred, the relationship is over. I don't care what the situation is. Cut your losses and move on with your life. So those are my thoughts, and now I want to hear from you. What did you think of this story, and how do you think this guy handled the situation? Now, with this woman being a perfect 10, would you still be tempted to continue dating her? Or would you do what this guy claims he's going to do and cut things totally off with her? Tell us about that in the comments. Also, be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel, and I will talk to you on the next one.